Most people look at a deal and ask one question: what's the yield? And that's fine. But I think if you've been doing this for a while, you know that it's actually, that's not actually the question. The question is, what does this deal actually look like in 12 months' time? And I think that takes a bit more thinking than the headline number. Gross yield hides a lot. Let's take 7% gross yield. Sounds solid, but once you've worked through your mortgage, management, maintenance, reasonable void allowance on your actual tax position, that number starts to look very different. Section 24 is permanent. Now that's not necessarily an issue. It just needs to be put into your model. Because if it isn't, you can be in a situation where a deal that looks like it's working actually isn't. And crucially, that is a potential scenario. It's just what happens when numbers aren't modeled properly. So assuming the numbers stack up, here's where experienced portfolio buyers are going next: the tenants. Not just is there a tenant, but who is the tenant? How long have they lived there? 2 years of consistent rent looks very different from someone who's moved in just simply 6 months ago. What's the payment history like? Are there any gaps? What does the tenancy documentation actually look like? Because with tenants in situ acquisitions, you're not just buying the properties, you're inheriting that relationship. And I think that's the part that's often underestimated. The income you model depends on the tenant continuing to pay. And with the Renters' Right Act now in force, replacing a tenant is much more structured process than it was previously. That's fine if you're walking into a solid tenancy, but it changes the risk if you're not. A 2-year tenant with a clean payment record is a real asset now. Incomplete documentation and a tenancy you can't assess starts to become a real liability. Most investors don't ask these questions clearly enough before they make that crucial offer. The ones who build good portfolios do.
So for me, building relationships is the heart of everything. And I know we're talking about, I'll digress slightly, but we're talking about building compliance, governance, etc. The truth is, renting as a landlord or being a tenant is a human-to-human relationship, and everything related to the industry is human-to-human. You like your solicitors, you have a good relationship, they understand you, understand them, they'll deliver what you're looking for. The seller likes you, he might choose you because you align in terms of value and not particularly in terms of offer. And building those relationships with your third parties is your strongest point, and it really sits at the heart of every single deal. So
this is where the app actually comes in, because what I've just described, the level of information you need to assess a deal properly, that's exactly what we try to put in front of you early in the sales process. This is the app. Let me show you quickly what you're actually looking at. What you're seeing here are exclusive tenanted properties, off market, coming through in real time, single units, portfolios, blocks. And this is the key part. You're not seeing a headline number and then having to chase it for information. The yield is there, tenancy details are there, property type, EPC rating. It's structured so you can make a proper informed assessment early without having to call us first. Much more of the interesting activity right now is at a portfolio and block level. Landlords are consolidating existing non-performing assets, looking for a clean handover to someone who really understands what they're buying. And this is where the assessment really matters. Because we're working closely with the NRLA, we're speaking to those landlords before anything reaches the open market. So you're not competing for the same stock everyone else is looking at. You're seeing it earlier with the information you actually need. And I think that's what changes the assessment process to deal making.
So the role that a professional platform it does to enable really the transaction is becoming the key enabler for you, and sort of also your supporter in negotiations when you're negotiating with the seller. Again, it goes to not only the level of professionalism, but they enable you to obtain the information you need during the due diligence process. If they have a good understanding, they will also strengthen the relationship with the sellers, with other landlords particularly that are looking to exit, and facilitate communication and clarity between the parties. So,
quick question. When you look at a deal, do you start with the yield or the tenancy? Just drop yield or tenant in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in how people approach this. One more thing worth saying, EPC ratings. The direction of travel is clear. All rental properties need to be a C or above. Timelines have moved around, but upgrading a D or an E rated property costs somewhere between £10,000 to £20,000 per unit, sometimes even more. So when you're assessing a deal, that's a cost input, not a checkbox. And if you're buying a D-rated property at a price that doesn't reflect that, you're effectively overpaying. And crucially, what you'll notice in the app is that EPC is flagged up front on every listing because it's relevant. And it needs to be in your numbers before you make that crucial offer, not after. So, to bring it together, this is the framework that makes sense if you're building at a portfolio level. Start with the tenant, payment history, tenancy length, documentation, then model net yield properly. Mortgage, management, maintenance, void, and tax. Not gross, net. Check the EPC before you engage. Factor the cost in or reflect it in your offer. Review compliance documentation, gas safety, EICR, deposit protection, licensing where it applies, because that determines what's available to you going forward as a landlord. And then ask whether this fits how you're building, the geography, tenant profile, management logistics. And then ask whether this fits how you're building, geography, tenant profile, management logistics. The best deal in isolation isn't always the right deal for the portfolio you're actually building. And I think that's where a lot of decisions are made. The investors who do this consistently on every deal are the ones who end up with portfolios that hold up. Not just in a good market, but in this market.
when I'm reviewing a structured landlord-to-landlord deal, specifically to a platform like the Landlord Property Exchange, what gives me the confidence is the platform and the services. They understand exactly my requirements. So every deal they bring to me is one that has been pre-vetted before, and it has been filtered to know whether it meets my requirements or not. So that gives you the confidence, because I'm not just looking at deals that waste my time. I'm looking at ones that are very well targeted to my requirements.
If you're actually looking to add to a portfolio, or you're consolidating and want to understand what's actually coming through, the best thing to do is to have a look. Download the app, register your details, set your criteria, geography, yield, property type, budget, and we'll match you to the deals proactively as they come through. You're not searching through everything publicly listed. You're seeing tenanted, income-producing properties that fit what you've told us you're specifically looking for. And because both sides are vetted before any introductions are made, you're not wasting time on sellers who aren't serious, or stock that isn't what you're looking for. If you've got a specific question about how to assess a tenanted deal properly, drop it in the comments. I'll read them, and then we will make videos about the best questions to help other landlords and investors. Thanks very much.